Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Power Apps and Coffee. I am Tim, and today is DevOps Day. Ooh, buckle up. Source control, DevOps, these are things as developers that we deal with every day. Usually not a big issue. And in the Power Platform, as our applications become more mission critical, we're going to have to incorporate these things into our apps. I have to at work, and I'm sure at this point, some of you watching this probably have to do it as well. So how are we going to put this in practice? There are tools for Azure DevOps, and we're going to focus on Azure DevOps. We're not touching Jira here, that are geared toward the Power Platform, that allow builds and releases to interact with the Power Platform. And when I first started looking at these, I thought, well, this should be pretty easy. I know Azure DevOps pretty well. I can create a build or a pipeline. I'll put this together. Well, that was the easy part. The hard part was getting this started. And in this episode, we're going to go through that setup to show you what the hurdles are, what you have to do, and some of the gotchas that you have to overcome in order to get Azure DevOps set up properly to talk to your Power App. So what do we have to do? What are we setting up? It is not as easy as simply open up Azure DevOps, open up Power Apps, and marry the two together. No. So we have Azure DevOps. We have the Power Platform. What is the blocker here? Let's go over what it is we're going to need to make this work. First, of course, you're going to need Azure DevOps. On cloud, on-prem, doesn't matter. Get yourself a collection, get yourself a project. We're not going to go over too much about or anything about setting up Azure DevOps. You should have that already. But there is one thing within Azure DevOps that you do need, and this is not negotiable, and that's Git. I have tried this without Git, but a Git repository is mandatory for this to work. It just doesn't work without it. Microsoft is invested in Git. They bought GitHub, of course. So if you're not familiar with the Git repository, now's a wonderful time to learn because you really don't have a choice here. You're going to need that. Next, in the requirements list, you're looking at, back on Power Apps, you need the CDS. There has to be a CDS database in each environment that Azure DevOps touches. I wasn't happy about this because of licensing at work originally, but you don't need to use it in order for the Azure DevOps connection to work. No, you just need it present. And this is because the presence of the CDS database converts your normal environment into a more of a dynamics environment. Not only does it give you the URL, which we'll need in the next video, but it also gives you the ability to set permissions within your environment in the way that Azure DevOps needs. So those are your 1-2 that are non-negotiable throughout this. You need Git and you need the CDS. Next, let's look at the other things that we're going to have to set up as part of this preparation process. First thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have to get to Azure Active Directory. Now, if you don't have the ability within your tenant, if they've not granted you the permissions to update Azure Active Directory, go find the person who does, because you are going to need to set up an enterprise application within Azure Active Directory. This is the tie that binds between Power Platform and Azure Active Directory. Once we have that properly established, we're going to go to Azure DevOps and set up a service connection. What that'll do is that will give us the URL that the pipeline needs to point to in order to move our solutions to and from Azure DevOps and the Power Platform. Power Platform administration is also a necessity here. If you are not a Power Platform admin, again, go meet yours. We have to go into Power Platform administration to update the permissions on our environment. We're going to take that enterprise application and we're going to add it as an application user within the Power Platform admin. Now, of course, that's not done directly in the Power Platform admin, but it does allow us to get to manage our permissions within Dynamics in order to make that happen, which again, why we need the CDS. Dynamics plays a key role here in setting up the permissions we need in order to make this work. Finally, we're going to need to have a knowledge of how to do pipelines within Azure DevOps. We're not going to go over the specifics in terms of theory behind them. We're just going to set one up. So if you don't have immediate familiarity with setting up a pipeline, you'll learn enough in this video series in order to get it working, but you may want to familiarize yourself with the inner workings of setting one up in terms of the Azure Active Directory platform. Okay, let's take a look at these steps a little bit more in depth and how we go through putting all this together. Okay, let's get started with Azure Active Directory. So we are going to make ourselves an enterprise application. Now I have it here because I've been through this process once or twice. But to get to it, if you don't know Azure AD very well, we're going to start with all services. And that'll get us our list of what we have. And of course, we're going to come in here and we're going to hit enterprise applications. Now it's going to give you a list of what you have. And as you can see right here, I've already done one, but we're going to create a new one for this exercise. And we do that, we're going to go up here to new application, and we're going to create our own. We're going to give it a fun name we'll remember. And we want to do integrate with any other application you don't find in the gallery. We are not going to choose these. If you're better at Azure AD and you can make this work, please do. For me, this is the way I've learned. So this is the way I'm going to show you today. Oop, let me get me out of the way. We have integrate with any other, and then we're going to hit create. When the enterprise application is done and created, we come to this screen here, and the first thing we're going to note are these three properties. And we're going to need to jot these down somewhere because the application ID and the object ID especially are two of the three pieces that we are going to need when we create our service connection in Azure DevOps. These are very important. So go ahead, copy these to your clipboard, put them in Notepad somewhere, and save them. Next, we're going to go back to all services, and we are going to go to app registrations. We don't see ours yet, so we're going to view all. And now we're going to be able to see all the ones that have been created. We're going to go ahead and choose the one that we just built, so Power Apps DevOps Enterprise App. So here we're going to need to go to View API Permissions. We're going to add a permission. And we're going to get Azure DevOps. Click its option, Add. And we're going to add another. Power Apps Runtime Service. Again, take its option and hit Add. Add permissions. So now our enterprise application is able to connect to Azure DevOps and the Power Apps Runtime Service. Next, this is a very important part. And if you're playing along with the video right now, watch this. Don't do this yet. Rewind after you see what I'm going to do, because you're going to get one shot at this for your enterprise application, and it is extremely important. We go to Certificates and Secrets. And we need to generate for this a new client secret. You can decide exactly how long you want this to go. You can name it describe it however you want to. I like to go to never because I'm just doing this for demonstration, and you hit add. We see here we have a value for our secret. Copy to clipboard is available right now. This is the only time it's available in the GUI. You cannot get this value again. You might be able to get it in PowerShell. I'm not good enough with PowerShell in Azure Active Directory to get this. I haven't found it yet, so I'm just going to give you the warning right now. Get it, put it in Notepad with the other two, with the application and object ID, and just put them aside for right now. But this is extremely important. That's all we have to do for Azure Active Directory. To say it's not too bad. Hopefully, You will have an administrator in your organization that can do these things for you. If not, let's say the steps aren't too bad. It took a bit to figure out, but part of my biggest problem was figuring out how to get to that secret. I made that mistake more than once. Okay, let's move on. So here we are in the Power Platform Admin Center, and we're on the Environments section right now where we can see our environments. I only have the one, and I do have the CDS database already established, so we're not going to cover that here. So let's go into our environment and check out the permissions that we need to set up. We click on it, and we will be going to users here, but I want you to take note of this URL. When you add the CDS, you get a Dynamics URL. You need to jot this down for every environment that you will be using with our Azure DevOps integration. This will give us the target for Azure DevOps as used with our service connection. So make note of that, and then go over here to users. We'll go to See All and manage users in Dynamics 365. Now, before we add our user, we need to go back to the Azure Active Directory screen where we have our enterprise application. And we need to get the application ID of our enterprise app. So we copy that to the clipboard. We go back here, and Dynamics defaults us to enabled users. We want to switch to application users. We see here that I have already built one, but we're going to build a new one with the new enterprise application that we built. So we click New, and you notice immediately the only non-locked field is application ID. We're going to paste that there. Now, depending on how Dynamics is behaving for you, you may need to enter a business unit. I only have the one. It is the same URL that prefixes my Dynamics URL, so I enter it here, and we save and close. Dynamics will look up this application ID and populate it for us. And here we are, Power Apps DevOps Enterprise App. It killed the spaces for us. So now we need to come in, we need to select our user and click on Manage Roles. We're going to scroll down, we're going to make them a system administrator, hit OK. And that's it. We'll need to repeat this now for every environment we plan to use with Azure DevOps. Not just now, but every environment you choose in the future, whether it's the production environment or a development environment, they all need to be established in this way. You can use the same account, and we'll see why later in terms of the enterprise application, but they all need to be established within our environment in order to have our application user established. Okay, finally, we are going to go back to Azure DevOps, and we are going to set up our service connection. So as you see here, I have my collection, I have my project, and we are in the project screen right now. If we go down to project settings, we will see we have a section under pipelines for service connections. I have one made, of course, but we're going to make a new one for this example. And we will see if we scroll down, there is a connection type for Power Platform. Let me move me out of the way briefly. Click Next. Okay, so we'll need to fill in the information here. Server URL, this is our environment URL. And so this particular service connection is being built for my default environment. As you have other environments, this URL will change, and you will need to make a new service connection for each environment. For Tenant ID, if we go back to our Azure Active Directory screen, and we will see under our dashboard, all services, we have a tenant properties, and that will get us our tenant ID. Drop that here. Application ID and secret are going to come from what we took from our enterprise application not long ago, and our secret. Now from here, we're going to give it a service connection name. default Power Apps environment connection. We want to give it some name that allows us to know which environment it's going to be accessing, and we hit save. So we see here default Power App environment connections. And that's it. This will come into play when we come back into building a pipeline. But for now, this is all we need to do to set up our service connection for this example in Azure DevOps. So that concludes our setup in getting ready for DevOps and source control with our Canvas apps in Power Apps. In the next episode, we're going to take what we've established here and we're going to start our pipeline. We're going to get our Power App into source control. And then in the third episode, we are going to get that source code from Azure DevOps and put it into an environment in Power Apps, completing our CI/CD pipeline. See you soon.